there any relevance of native speaker norms? That's a question for TEFLologists. Is it better to focus on form or to focus on forms? That's a question for TEFLologists. If you use a textbook, is your classroom authentic, or should your approach be more learner-centric? From feedback to learner autonomy, we'll discuss it all on TEFLology.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm Rob.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome back to the TEFLology Podcast, a podcast all about teaching English as a foreign language and related matters, presented by three self-certified TEFLologists.
The first segment is about English-only policies. It was recorded live at the ExcitELT conference, Rikyo University, Tokyo, Japan.
Second annual,
yes. We were presenting about using podcasts as a form of professional development, and as part of that, we presented a live segment to the audience, which we recorded for posterity, and that is what you're going to hear just now. Okay, so I want to talk about English-only policies. So to begin with, do you work in a place with an English-only policy?
No, I don't. I used to. Here.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't anymore. And I'm not really told. I don't have any kind of instructions from the powers that be to only teach in English.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
yes, currently here.
Right.
I guess I'm part of the management that, in theory enforces an English-only policy.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wasn't the one who created that policy in the first place.
Okay, so what's the purpose of the policy?
The purpose of the policy is, I manage on a unified curriculum, which means that it's what we call strongly unified, which means that all 43 of our instructors have the same course aims, the same assessment methods, the same general methodology for teaching the course. And because we have both native and non-native Japanese and Japanese-speaking, non-Japanese speaking students, it's another way to kind of keep the unity of the classroom experience for the students.
Okay.
You said enforced. That's a interesting choice of words. What do you think it needs to be enforced?
Well, that's a very good question. So again, in the information that we provide to the students says, this is an English-only course. When we do the teacher training for the teachers, we say this is an English-only course. We've done faculty development sessions where we've talked about the English-only policy and different reasons why we might have it. The reason I mentioned before, there's other reasons, but I think we'll get onto those as well. However, it's not a strongly enforced policy.
Okay.
And we understand that there are cases where the policy may be not followed.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's going to be my next question. Do you follow it?
Do I follow personally?
Well, both of you, but we'll come to that later on.
Yep.
So English-only policies, I think they've probably been around as long as language teaching has existed, but as a kind of a formal thing, I think they date back probably to the direct method, which was pioneered by Belitz, who we talked about in episode 6.
Charles Belitz?
Okay.
No, Maximilian Delphinius Belitz,
Oh, yes.
I think you'll find.
That guy.
Was he the no-good grandson? Or that was a different brother.
Charles Belitz was the one who believed in Atlantis and aliens and stuff.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe dating back to the direct method, continuing through audiolingualism, which had pattern practice, drilling, and so on, and surviving into CLT. And there are a few different reasons, a few different justifications that I could find for English-only policies. And I've divided them into three kind of sections.
Okay.
So the first one is pedagogical. So English-only policies allow for greater amounts of communication in the target language, potentially. They encourage negotiation of meaning, and you can teach communication strategies in the context of an English-only policy.
Yep.
So pedagogical. Practical. Often classes are multilingual. There's no common language between the students. And often teachers don't know a second language. So it's difficult in that case. And the third one is optics. Often students and parents of students have an expectation that classes will be English only. So schools do it as a way to increase the positive optics on there. I don't know if that's the right word that I chose, but
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So those are the three reasons. What do you think of those reasons or those categories of reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true that classes are multilingual, but I think it splits into two. What can the teacher do that the learners can't, or what can the learners do that the teacher can't? And often I feel like English policies are enforced because the teacher can't speak the local language. So I kind of feel it's a bit of there's a lot of baggage behind the English policy, perhaps,
right. Yeah.
In that sense.
In terms of the pedagogical one that you mentioned, I assume research has been done on it?
Yes, we'll get onto that.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I wonder how. Yeah, first of all, I wonder if what the research shows in terms of pedagogical advantages, and I'm sure there's disadvantages pedagogically speaking as well. So balancing those. But, I mean, I don't know, in general, those sound like fair advantages.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there has been some criticism of these points. The first one, probably the first sort of big criticism of English-only policies was Robert Phillipson in Linguistic Imperialism. He calls it the monolingual fallacy, the idea that you should be teaching in the target language so that the learners will learn more of the target language. And he says that there isn't really any evidence to support that. And he also says it's part of global Western imperialism.
Okay.
I don't know, what do you think about that?
But, yeah, perhaps. But, I mean, could you not apply those same pedagogical advantages to teaching any language?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell Phillipson. I will. Yeah, all right.
I find I think this monolingual fallacy, it does limit the multilingual classroom, because students, and I think somebody said this that we interviewed, maybe Batia Alpha, the vocab specialist, she said that our learners have access to 2 languages, so that's a better opportunity for learning. They can access both languages. They can talk about what it means in Japanese, for example, and then how it translates or fits to English.
Right.
And denying them of that kind of exchange in languages is imperialistic, perhaps.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially, depending on the target language.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, I've heard the argument about, basically students they're in the classroom, they're probably thinking in their L1, so it might seem odd to not allow them to vocalize it.
Yeah. A second criticism comes from Michael Swan, the well-known grammar man. He said that it's very convenient that the methods that have been developed in TESOL don't require teachers to learn the student's language, which, I think what's interesting about both of those criticisms is they kind of assume a certain type of teacher. They assume your monolingual Western, native speaker teacher going abroad. And I think English-only policies, maybe they have different roles in different contexts. Yeah.
Yep.
So you're asking about evidence. So there is some research that's been done on this. So research has shown that the L1 performs a number of useful functions in the classroom, including contrastive analysis of the L1, the L2.
Yep.
Introducing vocabulary. It's much more efficient to just be able to tell the word to the students in their own language than try to describe it in some kind of arcane way. Also, resolving communication difficulties has been shown to be a benefit. And also translation, like full translation, can help learners to understand the nuance of language. Because quite often they can get the gist of something, but in order to get the complete nuance of it, translation can be a useful tool. Yeah.
Of course.
Well, you say of course, but, English-only policies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, no, but the point is, I think, obviously, in terms of communication, if you can switch to the L1, that's going to solve that's going to make the communication much clearer.
Right. Yeah.
If putting myself in the learner's shoes, if I could see my teacher conversing in 2 or more languages, I'd be motivated by that. And so I kind of think that if I use Japanese, for example, in the classroom, I'm showing the learners that I am learning their language too, and it's not just one way. And I think that could be motivating in that sense. For me personally. My voice just went.
As a language learner, do you have a preference for being in a target language only classroom or a kind of mixed?
I prefer mostly target language, and then strategic use of whatever language I speak.
What do you mean by strategic?
Well, whenever it's, I was going to go on that subject, but whenever, like, for example, things like vocabulary, maybe try to, if the teacher tries to present it in context, if I'm still not getting it, then just tell me the word, that kind of thing. Or explaining concepts, certain grammatical concepts, it doesn't matter how many examples you give me, I'm probably not going to get it, because I'm not very good at language learning. So if the teacher can use the first language to facilitate that, then that's useful. So I talked about some of the benefits of L1 use from research. There's also some research showing benefits to English-only policies. Research has shown that they help learners deal with communication breakdowns and help prepare them for English-only environments. There's kind of research on both sides, and I think the general takeaway is that the L1 can be a useful tool in the classroom, but it's up to teachers to make a judgment call about when's an appropriate or strategic time to use it. And that's English-only policies.
Okay, so today's TEFL pioneer is a guy called Leo Van Lier. Have you heard of Leo Van Lier?
Got one of his books.
Have you? Which book have you got?
I think Interaction in the Language Classroom, is that one?
Yeah, that's one of them.
There you
go. The reason I want to talk about Van Lier today is this is someone that I only kind of found out about recently at a conference that I went to. I think you were there as well, Rob. And it was from a presentation that you were also at. We were sitting next to each other. And the presenter talked about the concept of symmetry. Not symmetry in like the mathematical sense, but symmetry or symmetrical conversations. And so that's what got me interested. What does that term mean? So then I went back and looked at Leo Van Lier's life. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so I'll start off by talking a bit about his background and then about his contribution to the field. So Leo, it's hard to say. Leo Van Lier was born in 1944 in the Netherlands, also Holland, and he passed away quite recently in 2012. So
Not that old.
No, he wasn't actually. I saw a video of him actually, like a YouTube interview that somebody did, which I'll be quoting from, and he looked quite young. So, very sad. Anyway, so I'll talk a bit about his life. So he became a certified teacher in the Netherlands, and then he moved to London to become a Longmans English teaching representative. I presume Longmans being the publisher. In the 70s, the early 70s, and then he moved on to Copenhagen to become an ELT consultant in Scandinavia.
Right.
ELT consultant, what's that?
Yeah, I see this a lot, this consultancy work.
Simon Borg's just become that as well. I think it's where you go around sort of consulting with people about ELT.
As the title suggests. The guy that taught me my Cert TESOL is now a British Council consultant in Syria.
Wow.
I'm not sure what that entails exactly. But
right.
In 1979, he returned to England and did his Linguistic and Applied Linguistics MA at Lancaster University.
Okay.
Along with the likes of, do you know anyone who's at Lancaster University that's quite well known?
What's his name? We talked about him before. Alan Waters, who was at Lancaster.
Yeah, not on this list, but he was. Michael Breen, Christopher Candlin, and Geoffrey Leach, as well. Nice. So he did his MA alongside those, and he also did his PhD there too between 1980 and 1983.
Right.
Leo became an assistant professor in linguistics and teaching English as a second language in the Department of English Language and Literature at University of Northern Iowa from 84 to 86. And then he moved on to the Monterey Institute of International Studies. Where's Monterey?
I think it's in California.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Don't look at me.
Where I believed he continued to work until his death as a professor of educational linguistics in teaching English to speakers and then that just cuts out but that should be speakers of other languages, I'm sure. But yeah. So that's a bit about his life, his professional life. In terms of his work, so I want to touch on how his work relates to the wider field. So Van Lier's work is kind of underpinned by socio-cultural theory, that of like Vygotsky, that kind of thing.
Landhof.
Yeah. Semiotics.
Yeah.
You know, who's related to semiotics?
The singer from the Semiotics.
Do you know a guy called Ferdinand de Saussure?
De Saussure.
De Saussure, yeah.
Sure.
Ferdinand de Saussure.
And in an interview that Van Lier gave, he was asked about what threads these interests together, and he said that the main thread between these for him is interaction.
Right.
And in particular, the unpacking of interaction. And he talks about 3 areas. He talks about agency, perception, and action in interaction, or trying to understand interaction, I guess.
Right.
So Van Lier said himself that agency, perception, and action underpins his view of language, meaning making in general, and his view of learning. Okay. So I'll give an example. So for example, of learners and teachers, he believed that both learners and teachers need to act as researchers.
Okay.
And researchers of their own worlds and observers of their own reality. And they should be able to reflect both formally and informally on interaction that takes place during lessons.
Okay.
So I think maybe the next example may kind of unpack that a little more, perhaps. So one manifestation of these ideas is the notion, like I said before, of symmetry and symmetrical interaction. And in his 1996 book, Interaction in the Language Curriculum, he states that true communication features symmetry and contingency, where connectedness, co-construction of meaning, affirmation, and emotional sharing thrives.
So this means some kind of parity between the teacher and the student. I mean, symmetry implies that there's an equal amount of everything on both sides.
Yeah.
Or an equal amount of one particular thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, is that what he's talking about? That the teacher and the student have to be on some kind of equal footing?
He's not just talking about the teacher and student. He's talking about learner to learner interaction.
Okay.
Initially he's talking about that kind of interaction.
Right.
It has been applied to like teacher to learner interaction, but he differentiates it between equality and symmetry.
Right. Okay.
But what aspect of the interaction is symmetrical?
So I'll differentiate between two. So equality refers to the relations between the interlocutors in terms of social status or role, competence in relevant knowledge or skill.
Right.
So in this case, this could be language proficiency, I guess. Proficiency, that's the next step. And any other source of authority or power. So they can relate to any kind of interaction between people.
Right.
So you could have a teacher speaking to a learner. Maybe he often cites native and non-native interaction as being an unequal situation.
Right.
In terms of language proficiency.
Okay.
Although, and then he's, you're the domain of power that comes with the baggage of being a native speaker, perhaps.
Right. Well, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, in that sense. And then symmetry refers to the structural relations between the utterances of interlocutors in a conversation.
Okay.
So symmetrical utterances show mutual orientation and dependency, a sharing of conversational rights and duties, and the convergence of perspectives.
Okay.
Right.
So this, I mean, so for example, I was teaching my students about, I was teaching them about language and gender this week, and we were looking at the conversational division of labour, like who's doing more of the question asking, who's doing more of the attention getters, who's maintaining the conversation, who's kind of shutting things down, In that context, it's a gender-based thing. Is that the kind of thing he's talking about? A division of labour in the interaction?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and he says that unequal partners can achieve a symmetrical conversation, and also equal partners can have an asymmetrical conversation.
Okay.
So I think he does mean in terms of like going back to his original terms of action and agency and perception. I guess you could. That's where those terms come in.
I mean, I don't know. It's hard. The symmetry sounds. It just sounds more like almost like a co-construction of ideas.
Yeah. I believe that's the case. And the presentation we went to, the presenter was talking about symmetrical conversation in educational...
In teacher education.
Teacher education.
Mm-hmm.
So he was talking about, in this case, it was the teacher trainer talking to trainee teachers.
Yeah.
And he said, we're not equal, we come from unequal positions, but we can still have symmetrical conversation. And I think he related, the presenter at least, related that more to techniques, like conversational techniques.
Right. So an asymmetrical conversation would be one where, for example, in this case, the teacher trainer is trying to convey a certain idea. Yeah. But not doing it in the right way, so that the trainee doesn't understand, or the trainee's reading it on a different level, or
he also said that this only really applies to conversation as opposed to other kind of speech acts like interviews, because interviews are unequal, right? Like inherently unequal in that sense.
But how about podcasts? Do you mean they're also asymmetrical?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're asymmetrical in that sense.
Right.
Yeah, but in a conversation, I think he wants to say that people are trying to build towards the same co-construction.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I guess in a conversation.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
That's one of his ideas. But in terms of a concept of symmetry, that definitely interests me in terms of the way that two teachers reflect with one another, and in terms of the questioning of one another and not giving advice when unsolicited, that kind of thing. Because that's not symmetrical in my view, anyway, at least.
This like the reflective practice group stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how it relates to me in that sense.
It seems an important part of this would be strong listening skills.
Yeah. Recently I've been reading about active listening and that whole area of research. And it's not really related to education. It's related more to, there was one I read article about negotiators, hostage negotiators, and actually actively listening to the person who's keeping people hostage, basically. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, Van Lier, moving on, Van Lier, according to Merrill Swain, single-handedly brought the concept of the metaphor of ecology into applied linguistics.
Right.
Have you ever heard ecology, ecological applied linguistics?
I've heard the term, but I don't.
As a metaphor, not actual ecology. In his own word, I'll read again in his own words. From the ecological perspective, all communicative acts in a learning environment have multiple reasons, causes, and interpretive potential, depending on all the relationships between and among all the participants in the setting, as well as the evolving setting itself. In this way, it can be said that the pedagogical setting is an ecosystem embedded in other ecosystems. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as a metaphor, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. Like, everything is interrelated.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. I wonder if we could use Fanslow's idea of looking at the very small changes and how that makes a difference to the system. Would that be connected to that? Small changes in the ecosystem produce bigger changes in other areas.
Yeah.
Butterfly effect.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he talks about how outward measurements of the classroom and how what we're actually seeing, what teachers are experiencing and seeing, shouldn't be the be all and end all. Right. That there are other systems at play, basically. That's what he's trying to say. Very much like an ecosystem, like that kind of thing. Some of the things he talks about is perception and action. So in terms of ecology, perception and action form a unity, and learning a language crucially relies on how the learner, as an active participant in a meaningful activity, learns to perceive language. And then the second point, emergence. He talks about language being non-linear, and it does not proceed piecemeal as a steady progression, but as a series of transformative experiences. Again, he relates that to ecology.
Right.
And also quality. He said the ecological approach to education asserts that ultimately the quality and the lasting success of education are primarily dependent on the quality of the activities and the interaction or opportunities available to the learners in the educational environment. So that's how he defines ecology in terms of language education, and applied linguistics.
Okay.
So that's Van Lier's kind of two contributions. I don't really understand, in all honesty, the ecology part, but the symmetrical part, at least, does kind of speak to me, at least.
Yeah, I think I don't see what he's getting at with the ecology, but it's the same issue that I have with that as with things like the complex applied systems stuff, or complex dynamic systems. I mean, I don't understand, and it's my own fault for not having read it properly. I think, but I don't really understand what the result of that is, what the consequence of that is. How do we use that?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just a descriptive thing, then that's kind of fine.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's coming like I said, from a socio-cultural perspective on interaction, I guess. So that's how it would all these interplays are quite they're a characteristic of that kind of approach. I think.
Right.
These kind of unseen systems of interaction.
So I guess it's maybe about how you understand the classroom, rather, and maybe just understanding it in a different way will affect what you do in it.
Yeah, and that
and maybe not relying on one particular model of how you look at the classroom.
And that kind of goes back to his original point: as teachers and learners need to be researchers. Like they need to be constantly aware of their position in the interaction, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm going to read more about Van Lier because I quite like this idea of symmetry. It's a good concept. Okay, so that's Leo Van Lier.
This week's TEFL news is, well, it's that time of year again, guys. The ELTons winners have been announced.
Good.
Yeah.
Is it ELTons or ELTons?
It's ELTons.
ELTons. It is ELTons.
Yeah.
Correct. That's the correct answer.
Thanks.
So I guess full disclosure to start things off, we submitted this podcast.
Not this one you're listening to, but the podcast as a
podcast in general.
Yeah.
In the category of innovation in teacher resources, I think it was.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That was for this year, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was a long time ago, but yeah.
It was last autumn, I guess.
Yeah.
Are we going to find out if we won or not?
Yeah, I'm going to announce
is that
it
the news?
right now.
Yeah.
So I think we were put on a very, very long list. They accepted our nomination, basically. They accepted our submission.
I think they have to accept every nomination.
Well, no, it was hard for them to accept our submission. Because there's a whole thing about the dates, if you remember.
Oh,
yeah, it has to be within the last
so
few years.
one of the qualifying factors, I believe, is you have to show development within 2 years of the product, or...
Well, it has to have been introduced, or it has to have had sufficient change made
within the last year.
Yeah. And,
so obviously we've been doing this for many years.
Yeah. We're old hands at this.
Yeah. So when we submitted the application, we had to kind of show how we've developed it in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
which we kind of have. Well, no, they accepted that. Like eventually, they said, okay, yeah, we accept your application, and then later they told us you did not make it onto the medium list.
Maybe for people that don't know, who runs the ELTons?
I should explain.
So
the ELTons are run by the British Council, and it's ELT, English Language Teaching, ELTons.
Yeah.
Awards.
What's the ONS?
I think it's just to make an easy to say word.
Okay. It must mean something.
Maybe. I don't know.
Like
on. I don't know. And so so it's every year they do this. I don't know. They've been doing it for quite a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say like
about 10 years, maybe
more than 10 years. And I get they're meant to be sort of or the winners are meant to be sort of innovative or doing new interesting things in the world of ELT.
Yeah.
In terms of materials.
Mm-hmm.
So we submitted. We didn't get. I'm still talking about us, but we didn't get onto the short. But they announced the shortlist earlier this year, and then on June 14th, they did a award ceremony, as they do.
Yes.
This year the ceremony was at the Millbank Tower Skyloft.
Okay.
You familiar?
Been there many times.
Millbank Tower.
Where's that? Is that in London?
It is. It's in the centre of London, on the river.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They I don't know when they started doing this part, but they had they do interviews, what they call red carpet interviews.
They did that
they did that. Well, we've talked about the ELTons, I think 2015.
Maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah. And we didn't talk about last year, but last year they actually so in the 2015 one they did red carpet interviews and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So here it wasn't a red carpet because it was just in the bar of the Skyloft. But they had a couple of people. I'm not sure. To be honest, like all these videos are online. You can watch all 2 hours of the ELTons,
Right.
and another hour of interviews.
Okay.
I kind of scrubbed through them quickly. But anyway, they make a big deal. Everybody gets dressed up. All the finalists get dressed up. They come along, the interview. They have a minor celebrity presenting it.
Yeah, it was what's her name from Countdown?
Oh yeah.
The woman from
Susie Dent.
Yeah, Susie Dent. That's it.
right.
She's a legend.
She was presenting it this year?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I would like to.
Now you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
I've never watched Countdown.
Yeah, I saw a picture of her.
But she does the numbers. She doesn't even do the word.
No, she does the word. She's in Dictionary Corner.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Carol.
That was ages ago.
That was ages ago.
And she did the numbers.
She did the numbers.
Yeah.
Who does the numbers
insurance,
now?
Rachel Riley. A woman called Rachel
Okay.
Riley.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Susie is
Yeah.
So there's several categories. Maybe we can just talk about some of the winners.
Mm-hmm.
So in the category of excellence in course innovation, we're not going to talk about all the nominees because we don't have time. But these tend to be mostly course books. And this year it was won by a book called Students for Peace,
Okay.
published by Richmond.
Sure.
What do you imagine the course book Students for Peace is all about?
In fostering intercultural understanding of each other, maybe.
Peace education.
Yeah.
One of our colleagues
Finding resolutions, that kind of thing. Right.
More or less. I had a look at...
Worthy winner.
So this is published by Richmond, and I had a look at their website you can see a few pages from the Peace book. They have like a little mission statement at the front saying, with this book, you're not only going to learn English, you're going to address one of the most important issues of our day, peace.
Right.
So, and then if you look at the categories, I don't know, the few sample pages I looked at looked like any other course book,
Right.
to be honest. There's a unit on friends, and it was, a good friend is like a diamond, a good friend does this, do you agree or disagree?
Mm.
And maybe some units are more peace related to than others, but
I'd quite like to see Students for Chaos, like an anarchist version. It wouldn't even be a course book. It'd just be a load of sketch, a load of notes,
just crayon scroll.
Yeah. Exactly, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Next is innovation. So that one was excellence in course innovation. This is innovation in learner resources.
Okay.
And this is called Develop EAP. It's a sustainable academic English skills course.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is it again course books?
It's I think there are books and a lot of online stuff.
Okay.
It's integrated.
Blended learning.
Blended learning. Mm-hmm. That's right. And so what they use is the UN's 17 goals for sustainable development as the kind of framework, and then everything's kind of built around that.
So this is the content of the course, right?
These unit headings.
I'm not sure that perhaps.
I'm just wondering how EAP relates. EAP, English for Academic Purposes, how that relates to that. These skills. Well, not skills. These
goals.
These goals. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think within those there's probably a lot of academic discussions or academic work that can be done.
Right.
Congratulations to Avril Bolster and Peter Levroy.
Okay.
The next category is innovation in teacher resources. This is the category which we were not successful in.
Yeah.
Just to remind you
we
guys.
are successful in, but not in their eyes.
Okay, fair enough. This was won by something called Tig Tag Clill, made by somebody called Twig World. It's by a company rather than a person.
Right.
You don't know, that could be a person's name.
Could be.
Twig World.
Twig World, yeah. Okay.
So Tig Tag is a series of mainly like videos, like short videos on different subjects. They seem mainly science-based. Yeah, science and geography. And it's for anybody to use, basically.
Right.
It seems it's mainly used, as far as I could tell, mainly used by primary schools in the UK. But what Twig World did was also make a CLIL version of the same materials. So you can switch to kind of simpler English. You can have subtitles, and they have various worksheets to work on the language. Yeah.
Okay.
So the next is digital innovation.
Okay.
This was one by Text Inspector. .com. This is basically it's a website, and you go and you drop a text in, and it analyzes it for you, and it gives you, readability, Flush Kincaid, CFR level, that kind of stuff.
Nice.
It's not free.
I used that kind of thing, a free one of that in my class the other day, just to show the learners there's a ton of words here that you don't really need to know, and you can kind of deduce what the meaning is by just looking at these keywords alone and showing them. But it kind of was, I kind of showed them the wrong thing, because what this was using was corpus and how often the words come up in corpora.
Okay.
But I imagine this is slightly different.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it does any corporate data. For the textbook I work on, we use, I think it's Readable. Is that maybe it's a website, which does basically the same thing, plus LexTutor.
Right.
That's what I used the other day, yeah.
Which is, so, I mean, this, it's a looks like a well-made piece of software, and it's well-designed. I'm not sure, not to criticize it, but in terms of digital innovation, it seems like there is a lot of similar tools out there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the way it's been done or the way it's been put together.
Yeah. Do you think we're coming off as a bit bitter in this segment?
Well, possibly, but not because we weren't nominated, just because we're bitter people in general. Okay. Almost finally, the Local Innovation Award. This is in partnership with Cambridge English Language Assessment. Was given to the Hausa to English Talking Book. This is a company called Mavis makes these. They make talking books. So basically it's a textbook, but you have like a little tool, and if you touch different words, it says the word in English.
Okay.
Yep. So they have a goal. I think the local innovation part is that they're trying to. They're working in Nigeria a lot, basically, and trying to provide a lot of these books to children in Nigeria.
Sounds good. Sounds worthy.
And then finally, the Lifetime Achievement Award was given to Professor Ronald Carter, MBE, of the University of Nottingham. Yeah, so
congratulations.
Yeah, so he wrote the Cambridge Grammar of English book with Michael McCarthy. He's been a pioneer, apparently, in the application of corpora, especially spoken corpora, to the development of pedagogical materials, etc. I'm sure he's a worthy winner.
Yes.
So, perhaps we should talk about him at some point on the podcast, maybe.
Yeah, that's why he's dead.
No, we don't. We don't.
Be a pioneer.
That's not what you were talking about that just now. That doesn't qualify you as a pioneer if you're dead.
It doesn't qualify you as a pioneer, but it is a condition.
Okay.
Okay, that's the 2017 ELTons.
Thanks for listening to today's episode.
Don't forget, if you'd like to get in contact with us, you can send us an email at TEFLology@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at TEFLology. You can also listen back to old episodes at TEFLology-podcast.com. If you're on Facebook, please like our page. And if you listen to our podcast through iTunes, please leave a review and rate us.
Or if you listen to other things, then also do the same thing.
Use their rating systems.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.